After a long and painful 20-hour labor, my husband grabbed the birth certificate and said, "Our baby will have my mother's name, not yours." I tried to argue, but he just sneered. "You don't get a say." The nurse looked at me and whispered, "Want me to tell him the truth?" My heart raced as everything seemed to shift in that moment. I had been with Mark for 6 years and married for 3. I thought we had a strong relationship, but I was wrong. There had been signs I ignored, signs I should have noticed. From the moment I met Mark's mom, Susan, I knew she didn't like me. She always made everything about her, acted like she was owed something, and treated Mark like he could do no wrong. At first, it was just small things like rude comments and insults about my looks, my background, even my job. But it got worse. She wanted control over everything in Mark's life. When we got engaged, she threw a fit because Mark picked the engagement ring himself instead of letting her choose. When we bought our house, she complained about everything: the neighborhood, the house itself, the walls. She'd show up unannounced, acting like she lived with us. Every time I brought it up to Mark, he dismissed it with, "She means well." No, she didn't. She just wanted to be the most important woman in his life. I thought things might get better once I was pregnant. I was wrong again. As soon as Susan found out, she took over. She hated the names I liked, insisted I follow her pregnancy diet, and even tried to pick my doctor. And Mark? He let her. He was a mama's boy, but I never realized how much until then. At 6 months pregnant, Susan made a comment that still gets to me. She looked me in the eye and said, "I hope the baby looks like Mark's side of the family. Your features wouldn't suit a girl." Mark was right there, but didn't say a word. That was when I first started feeling the strain in our marriage. When it came time for me to give birth, the labor was brutal. After 20 hours of pain, Mark was physically present but emotionally checked out. He played on his phone, took calls from his mom, and even left the room twice to get coffee while I was screaming in pain. Finally, our daughter was born. I barely had a moment to hold her before Mark grabbed the birth certificate. He didn't ask me about the name. He just said, "Our baby will have my mother's name." I thought he was joking, but he wasn't. I was too weak to argue, but I whispered, "No." We had already picked a name. I wasn't going to let him change it without me. He smirked and said, "You don't get a say." My heart sank. Before I could say more, the nurse leaned in and whispered, "Want me to tell him the truth?" My heart raced. I had no idea what she meant, but she clearly knew something, and whatever it was about to change everything. I whispered back, "What do you mean?" She looked at Mark, then back at me. "Not here," she muttered. "But trust me, you need to know." Suddenly, I couldn't stay quiet anymore. I had spent years being the patient wife, letting things slide. But not anymore. I looked at Mark and said, "You're not naming her after your mother." Mark stopped writing and stared at me in disbelief. "Excuse me?" "She's our daughter," I said firmly. "We agreed on a name. You don't get to change it without me." His face twisted in anger, and in a cold voice, he said, "After everything I've done for you, you should be grateful I'm letting you put your last name on the certificate." I felt like I'd been punched. The nurse was clearly angry too. Mark wasn't done. "If you don't like it, maybe you shouldn't have been so difficult during the pregnancy. You had one job, to carry my baby. You don't get to decide things. That's my right." That broke something inside me, and then the nurse did something I didn't expect. She grabbed the clipboard out of Mark's hands. "You will not speak to her like that," she said sharply. Mark stared at her in shock. "What the hell?" The nurse wasn't finished. She turned the papers over and said, "You're lucky she doesn't know the whole story yet." That's when I realized Mark was hiding something. I looked at him. "What is she talking about?" "Nothing," he said quickly. "She's lying." The nurse wasn't convinced. "I don't think so." Mark seemed to tense up as he looked between us. The nurse leaned in and whispered, "You should check the insurance records." It took me a moment to process her words, but when I did, everything clicked. Mark had handled all the insurance paperwork throughout my pregnancy. I had trusted him to take care of it. But now, something felt off. I turned to him, my voice trembling. "Mark, what did you do?" His hands clenched into fists. Nothing. But there was sweat on his forehead now. He was nervous. The nurse shook her head. "I've seen this before. Women come in thinking everything's fine, trusting their husbands with everything, and then they find out they're not even listed as the primary parent." I went cold. Mark jumped up from his chair. We're leaving. I ignore him. You changed my insurance records. My voice trembled. I did what I had to do, he snapped. You don't understand. Then make me understand. Silence. The nurse folded her arms. Do you want me to pull the records? Because I can, right now. Mark's face twisted into pure rage as he turned to me. You're not doing this. You just gave birth. You're hormonal. You're not thinking straight. But I was thinking clearly, and I knew without a doubt he had betrayed me. Mark grabbed my wrist. Not roughly, but firmly. We're not doing this here. I jerked my arm away. You don't control me. His jaw twitched, and for the first time, I saw it. Fear. Real fear. Not anger, but fear. The nurse turned to me. Do you want to see the records? I didn't hesitate. Yes. Mark let out a bitter laugh. Fine, you want the truth. You were never supposed to see them. The room seemed to shrink. The nurse gave me a look. Let me go get them. She walked out, leaving me alone with Mark. I stared at him. You're going to tell me what's going on right now. He ran a hand through his hair. You don't understand how hard this has been for me. My mom, your mom, she wanted me to handle everything, he said. He stopped, taking a deep breath. I waited. She said she knew what was best for the baby, he finally admitted. She said you were too emotional, too soft, and I had to take control. I felt sick. So you what? Took me off my own child's insurance? Made yourself the only legal guardian? Mark didn't answer. That was all I needed to know. The nurse returned with a folder. She set it on my lap and opened it for me. And there it was. Mark had listed himself as the only parent. My name was nowhere to be found. My whole body went cold. You were planning to take her from me? Mark didn't deny it. I thought I was going to be sick. The nurse's voice was firm. You're lucky I caught this. I've seen women lose custody of their own babies over things like this. Mark stood up, looking irritated. You're overreacting. I shook my head. I'm done. He laughed. Actually laughed like I was a joke. What, you think you can just leave? You just had a baby. Where are you going to go? The nurse placed a hand on my shoulder. She won't be alone. Mark's smirk faltered, and in that moment I knew his world was about to collapse. Mark's face was a mix of rage and panic. I could see him trying to think of a way to talk his way out of this, to manipulate me like he always did. But not this time. I turned back to the nurse. What do I do now? She looked at me carefully, then said, Do you have family nearby? Someone you trust? I did. My sister, Sophie. She lived about 30 minutes away, and unlike Mark, she actually cared about me. I reached for my phone to call her, but before I could dial, Mark snatched it from my hands. You're not doing this, he growled. The nurse stepped between us, her voice firm. Give it back to her, now. He hesitated, then tossed my phone onto the bed. You're making a mistake, he muttered. I ignored him and called Sophie. She answered on the second ring. Hey, how are you? How's the baby? I opened my mouth, but no words came out. My throat felt tight, as though speaking would make me shatter completely. The nurse took the phone from me and spoke instead. Hi, Sophie. This is Nurse Claire from the hospital. Your sister needs you here immediately. Sophie didn't hesitate. I'm on my way. Mark let out a bitter laugh. Really? You're running to your sister? She doesn't even like me. I shot him a look, maybe because she saw through your expletive, before I did. His face darkened. This is ridiculous. The nurse's voice was sharp. No, what's ridiculous is what you tried to do. And trust me, hospital staff talk. We don't take kindly to men who try to steal their wives' babies. Mark's fist clenched, but he didn't say anything. I turned back to the nurse. Can we change the paperwork? She nodded. Yes, and we're going to document everything. If he tries anything, there will be a legal trail. Mark stiffened. You're blowing this out of proportion. But he was sweating. He knew he had lost control of the situation. And then his phone rang. At first, I didn't think much of it. But then I saw the name on the screen. Mom. And just like that, I knew he hadn't done this alone. His mother was behind this. All of it. Mark declined the call, but I grabbed his wrist before he could put the phone away. You're going to tell me the truth, I said, my voice shaking with rage. There's nothing to tell. The nurse folded her arms. You can either tell her now, or she'll find out when she checks the legal records. Either way, it's over. Mark's eyes flicked to me, then to the baby in my arms, and for the first time, I saw guilt. I had to hear it from his own mouth. What did you do? Silence. I reached for his phone, but he yanked it back. Fine, he snapped. You want the truth? My mother said I had to make sure the baby was legally under my name only. That way, if you ever tried to leave me, he wouldn't be able to take her. The room spun. I tightened my grip on our daughter, my whole body shaking. She said she could get me a lawyer, he continued, his voice bitter. She told me the courts wouldn't favor you because you don't make as much money. That if I played it right, I could get full custody. My stomach twisted. His mother had been planning to rip my baby away from me before she was even born. The worst part, Mark went along with it. I felt like I was going to throw up. Why? I whispered. Why would you do this to me? Mark rubbed a hand over his face. Because you never respected my mother. The room went silent. The nurse sucked in a sharp breath. Oh my God, she muttered. I laughed a cold, hollow laugh. You tried to steal my child because I didn't worship your mother. Mark didn't answer. That was all I needed to know. The nurse turned to me. We're going to fix this right now. She grabbed my paperwork and walked out of the room, probably to get the hospital administrator involved. Mark moved toward me. Look this guy out of hand. We can fix it. I held my daughter tighter. There is no we anymore. His face twisted. I am her father and I am her mother. I shot back. And unlike you, I won't use her as a weapon. His jaw clenched. You're making a mistake. No, I said, my voice firm. The only mistake I made was trusting you. At that moment, Sophie walked in. She took one look at my face and knew something was wrong. What the hell is going on? Before I could answer, Mark's phone rang again. This time, Sophie snatched it out of his hand. She looked at the screen. It wasn't just his mother calling. There were texts, lots of them. When she unlocked the phone, because of course she knew his passcode, she went pale. She turned the screen toward me, and my world tilted again. There were messages between Mark and another woman. I can't wait to see you. Once the baby is here, we can finally be together. She won't have anything left. She'll be stuck. Sophie's face turned red with rage. Are you expletive kidding me? Mark's face went white. I stared at the messages, my vision going blurry. He hadn't just tried to steal my daughter. He had been planning to leave me for someone else, while I was pregnant, while I was carrying his child. I felt a calmness settle over me, a dangerous kind of calm. I looked at Mark and whispered, you have no idea what you've just done. Mark lunged for his phone, but Sophie yanked it back. Oh no, asshole, she hissed. You're not getting out of this. I couldn't take my eyes off the screen. The text blurred together, my hands shaking as I scrolled. Mark had been having an affair, not just a fling, a full-blown relationship. And it wasn't just cheating, it was calculated. She won't have anything left. She'll be stuck. That one text hit me like a bullet to the chest. It wasn't about love. It wasn't even about me. This was about control. He had planned to trap me, steal my baby, strip me of my rights, push me into a corner where I had nothing left. And then he was going to leave with someone else. I felt like I was drowning. My heart pounded in my ears. My body still weak from labor, my newborn daughter asleep in my arms, completely unaware that the man who was supposed to protect her had already betrayed her before she could even open her eyes. I turned to Mark. Who is she? His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Sophie scrolled further, her expression darkening. Then she froze. Oh my God, she looked up at me, her eyes wide. You're not going to believe this. She turned the phone around again. And there, staring back at me, was a familiar name. The other woman was his mother's best friend's daughter. The same woman Susan had been pushing him toward for years, the perfect girl, the one she wanted him to marry instead of me. I felt like everything had turned upside down. This wasn't just about control or even just about cheating. This was planned. Mark had gone along with it. I don't know what snapped inside me, but something broke. I stood up, still hurting from giving birth, and shoved the phone into Mark's chest. How long? My voice was calm, but cold. Mark looked pale. It's not what you think. Sophie laughed bitterly. Really? Because it looks like you and Mom were planning a new life without my sister. Mark clenched his jaw. She wasn't supposed to find out like this. I laughed sharply. Not supposed to find out like this? Was I just supposed to wake up one day and realize you took my baby and replaced me? He had the nerve to roll his eyes. You're overreacting. That was it. I grabbed the birth certificate paperwork from the table and tore it in half. You don't control me. You don't control her. I was shaking with anger. Then the door opened and Susan walked in. She saw the torn paperwork and the phone with the messages still open. She froze, then smiled. Well, she said smoothly, I guess there's no point in pretending anymore. Sophie let out a mix of a laugh and a scoff. Are you serious? You're not even going to deny? Susan smiled like she didn't care. It hit me then she wasn't sorry at all. This had been her plan from the start. I turned to Mark. You let her do this. Mark stayed quiet, not looking at me. He knew there was nothing to say. Susan stepped forward, calm but cold. Sweetheart, you need to understand this is what's best for the baby. I held my daughter tighter. The best thing for my baby is to keep her far away from you. Susan sighed like I was a child throwing a tantrum. You don't have what it takes to raise her alone, she said. Be realistic. Mark makes more money. He has stability. You don't. Sophie scoffed. Oh, please. If you think my sister is going to let you take her baby, you're crazy. Susan looked at Mark. Handle this. And that's when I saw it, hesitation. Mark was questioning everything. He had always followed his mother's lead, but now he was stuck. I leaned in close and whispered, if you go through with this, I'll ruin you. Mark blinked. You don't. I will take you to court. I'll expose everything, your fake insurance papers, your affair, your attempt to steal my child. I'll make sure you never see her again. He looked at Susan, and for the first time, I saw doubt in his eyes. Susan noticed too. Mark, she snapped, she's bluffing. We have the lawyers. I stared at her. Then we'll see who wins. Silence. Then Mark cracked. He turned to his mother and said, Mom, I can't do this. Susan froze. What? Mark's voice was barely a whisper. I didn't think it would go this far. Susan's face twisted with rage. Don't be stupid. We talked about this. Mark looked at me, then at the baby in my arms. He stepped back. I can't, he said again. Susan snapped. After everything I did for you, you're going to throw it away for her. Mark flinched, and at that moment I knew I had won. Not because Mark had a sudden change of heart, but because he was weak. For once, his mother wasn't controlling him. Susan stormed out, furious. Mark didn't follow her. Sophie called our cousin, who was a lawyer, and had him rushed to the hospital with the nurse's paperwork. We fixed the legal documents and I got full custody. Mark didn't argue. Deep down, he knew he had already lost. A few days later, I left the hospital with my daughter. Mark didn't come with us. Susan tried to reach out. She even showed up at my apartment, but I didn't let her in. Sophie called the cops. Eventually, Susan gave up. Mark moved out. I filed for divorce. As for the other woman, she left him as soon as she realized he had nothing left to offer. It took me a long time to process everything, to accept that the man I loved, the man I married, had been planning to destroy me. But holding my daughter in my arms, I knew one thing for sure. I had won. Not in a petty revenge way, but because I had escaped, and Susan had lost. She tried to build the perfect life for her son, and now she had nothing, but I had everything that mattered.